Hey, what's up? What's up, everybody? I'm happy to be here. I just decided I got some free time tonight and wanted to get on and do another show. I asked some of my brothers in the motorcycle club, hey, what are some topics that you would like to have discussed? Um, and there was a couple topics thrown out, and the one that really caught my attention that I wanted to focus on tonight was the topic of brotherhood. So we're going to be talking about brotherhood tonight. What does that mean? What does brotherhood mean? What's the general definition of brotherhood? What does brotherhood mean when it comes to a motorcycle club? More specifically, how do we view brotherhood in a 99% AMA motorcycle club? It might differ, and so I just want to throw that out there. Hey, welcome, Evan. Welcome, Randy. Welcome, Joe. If you guys, as you're logging on, if you guys have questions about brotherhood, feel free to go ahead and ask your questions. So first, I just kind of did a general definition of, how is brotherhood defined? And the definition, if you just Google it, the dictionary definition talks about the relationship between brothers. And so I know that seems pretty self-explanatory given the fact that it's called brotherhood. But what that really is talking about is, hey, what's up, Sandy? Welcome. Hey, Brandon, how's it going? What that means is that there is something very familial about brotherhood, right? It involves family. It involves, the close-knitness of the relationship. Another definition, it says an association or community linked by common interests. And so if you kind of put those two together, really brotherhood in its definition is a family-like bond that's brought together by common interest or common goals. And so when you look at a motorcycle club, motorcycle clubs have a mission statement. And, for example, our mission statement is, to support and defend the Constitution, especially our Second Amendment rights. It's a love for motorcycling, and it's, for charity and doing good in the community, and to focus on the brotherhood. That's our mission statement. That's, it should be the flag, which is what rallies us together as brothers in this motorcycle club, Rogue Souls Motorcycle Club. Let's see who else we got here. Hey, evening, Wyatt. Evening, Jonathan. If you guys have questions on brotherhood, go ahead and ask. One of the things I was thinking of, and good evening, Jester. Hey, Ratchet, how's it going? So when I think about brotherhood, we have about half of our members of the motorcycle club are vets, so prior service that have served in one of the branches of the military. Welcome, Javi. And one of the most common sayings, it's a reoccurring theme, is, after I left the military, there was this feeling that was missing for me, right? Is that feeling of camaraderie, you could say spirit de corps, whatever that is, that feeling of camaraderie, that feeling of brotherhood that you get when you're in the trenches with your brothers, you're doing hard training with your brothers, and you're embracing the suck together, and you're doing all the same things, and really the success of the unit is based off the success of every individual. And so, you want to cover down for your brothers or your fellow soldiers in your unit, right? And so many times have I had vets that have come into the motorcycle club or start riding with us and be like, wow, like I have always felt this part was missing for me until I started, riding with you guys, and I felt that brotherhood and that camaraderie, and this is, what I've been wanting, right? And so I would say, brotherhood for me is one of the single most important things dealing in a motorcycle club. I mean, that's what makes it worth it for me is the brothers and creating this family unit that I have with my brothers. And I have my brothers, and then they have, their families, and it creates, a bigger family, which is awesome. Evening, Alan. Welcome. So we're going to kind of get into this. The topic is interesting because, recently I was in attendance of one of Rogue Soul's local chapter meetings, and the chapter president, said, "Hey, I want to go around and I just want to talk about how you brothers feel like things are going in this chapter." So, I was just a state representative in the meeting, and so I was just kind of there to, observe and mentor, right? And I was listening to these brothers talk about, what was going good, right? And the common theme was, I'm just so happy that, this brother, I feel like we all really have this brotherhood and we all really have this bond and our connection's really awesome. And they just kept talking about, the brotherhood is good, right? And so as I'm sitting there thinking about it, the question popped into my mind is, well, I wonder what brotherhood means to each of these guys, right? I know what brotherhood means to me, but I wonder what brotherhood means to them. And the reason why I was thinking that is I started realizing that could be a little bit subjective, right? Is how are these individuals defining brotherhood? And so I asked that question, what is brotherhood to you? And I wrote down some of their responses just because, overall, I was curious. One of them said, brotherhood is about service. Okay. So let me pull up something here for you. So in a motorcycle club, we do a lot of service to different charitable organizations, but we also do a lot of service, for each other as well. And let's see if I can get this toggled on here. All right, so here's just a picture taken from our Instagram account, and this is, me and our brother Strike here, and we are working on a brother's bike that was having issues on a trip. And let's see here, see if I can get another one. Here's another picture, and you got, I'm taking the picture in this one. This is when we were in Sturgis, and Gremlin's Road Glide, he had passenger pegs on the back. His wife that was with him on the trip, she started having really bad leg cramps, right? And so my wife wasn't feeling the greatest that day either. And so we decided, hey, we're going to break off from the group and we're going to go into Sturgis and we're going to get, we're going to kind of keep it more of a chill day. So we went and bought some floorboards for Gremlin's bike and we installed them there so that, his wife could have a more comfortable ride and she wasn't miserable the rest of the trip. So going back on that, brotherhood is about service. And what does why is service important? Because it's putting something above yourself, right? Brotherhood is not about being selfish. It's about being selfless. It's about, being there to assist your brothers and to, help them out. However that is, whether that's just being a good mentor, whether that's just being a good friend, whether if that's, when someone's going through some hard times, just being there to just listen to them, whether they're going through relationship stuff or whatnot, and just being there to be a supportive brother, right? So that was one of the things that one of the brothers brought up, and I thought was a good point with service. The other thing they talked about is friendship, and I think that's inevitable in motorcycle clubs, the friendship part. And I would say, hey, the motorcycle club has made me be friends with people that maybe I would not have chosen on my own to be friends with. And I would say that's a great thing. It's been a great thing for me, is people that I didn't think, were going to be, great friends for me, have proven to be awesome friends for me and have taught me a lot. And so I value that in a motorcycle club. Another one was honesty. I think this is a big thing, is that, that comfort level of honesty is getting to a place where you can be comfortable enough with your brothers that you can be honest with them. And what this does is it gives you feedback that you need on yourself to become a better person, to become a better husband, to become a better brother, to become a better dad. In the military, we often call this, 360-degree feedback, and we're required to do it, especially if you're in certain leadership positions where you're supposed to get, the feedback from your leaders and from your peers and from your subordinates. Well, if you have a bunch of brothers who aren't afraid to be honest with you and call you out on your bullshit, then you have that built-in 360-degree feedback. And if you think about the value of that, it's almost like you have some built-in life coaches there, right? You have people that care about your well-being, that want you to succeed, and that they can see things about you that you can't really see about yourself. They can help you identify. It's hard to self-identify our own issues and our own flaws. But when you have brothers that honestly care about you, and they're not just doing it to be nitpicky, but they're doing it because they care about you, they're doing it because they care about the organization, the well-being of, the family, then all it does is helps everybody to, succeed and be successful. Joe says, totally agree with friendship shots for every walk of life. And Ratchet says, definitely. Another comment that one of the brothers brought up in that chapter meeting was being vulnerable. I thought that was a good point too, because I think men, especially, I feel like the motorcycle club brings a lot of type A personalities, a lot of alpha males. We are very prideful people, but if you can learn to be vulnerable and you can learn to share things that you're struggling with, and whether, that's just in your personal life, whether that's, club stuff, whether that's stuff you're dealing with at work, if you learn to be vulnerable, you might learn a lot about yourself, and you might get some awesome, advice, or you might get an awesome hand to, reach out to help you up when you really need it. But if you can't allow yourself to be vulnerable, then you're missing those opportunities, right? And that goes both ways. Let's see here. Brandon says, assuming respect is important, but how do you deal with disagreements or arguments with your brothers? Yeah, that's a good question. And I would say that, between disagreements and arguments with your brothers, the best way to do it is to go about it honestly and respectfully, right? I've had lots of disagreements with my brothers in the motorcycle club. I've probably had disagreements with, some of you watching this video, right? And sometimes, sometimes the disagreements might not be my personal disagreements with a brother, but sometimes it's been the club disagrees, right? And the club has asked me as a sergeant at arms, to address that situation. And I would say the best way that I've found to go about disagreements is, and I'm not perfect, I make mistakes all the time. I have to call brothers and say, hey, look, I'm sorry I got headed on that. Like, I just feel passionately about it, right? So I've had to do my fair share of apologies. would say the best way to go about disagreements, to answer your question, Brandon, is to let them know how much you care about them. Be like, hey, brother, I really appreciate you as a brother. There's something I need to talk with you about. And just like, I want you to know that, I'm coming at this because I have, your best interests at heart. And I'm only talking about this because I care about you. Right. So that's how I would approach it. I wouldn't beat around the bush with them. I would just be straightforward and honest with them and just say, hey, look, I understand that, we disagree on this. And if it's something that you're trying to make a correction, I would always do that correction by, letting them know how much you care about them first. If it's just a simple disagreement, one of the things my brother Gremlin has taught me a lot is like, listen first, is just hear them out and say, hey, I get that, we disagree on this. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you feel about that so I can see a little bit more from where you're coming from? And I can tell you that when I've sincerely listened to my brothers and just listened and heard them out, sometimes it changes my perspective, right? And sometimes I'm like, he brings up some really good points. And maybe I was taking a really hard stance and maybe my stance is softened, and maybe that comes to a place where we come to a common ground. Or maybe not. Maybe my stance is the same and my belief is the same. And at that point, I just have to say, hey, brother, I love you. I respect you, but I disagree with you on this. But at the end of the day, I think the most important message is, hey, I care about you and you're my brother. And, disagreements aside, personal issues aside, that's what should be the focus. I hope that answers your question, Brandon. Alan says, no matter the disagreement or argument is resolved, I think it's important to remember that in the end, we are all a family, so don't hold grudges. Yeah, exactly. I think that's the point I was trying to get to. And I think it is a little bit intimidating sometimes when you're talking to brothers, especially when you know you need to have a talk with a brother who you feel like might have a short fuse or might not be so understanding of your position. But you just have to put yourself in those shoes and remember that when a brother comes to you to talk about something, because he disagrees with you or he's coming to you, for a correction, is you just need to remember to approach it the same way. Is really listen to what the brother has to say. It might hurt hearing that he thinks that, you're a prideful shithead, right? It might hurt that he's trying to correct you on your writing. It might hurt that he's calling you out on personal stuff in your life. But at the end of the day, it's my responsibility as a brother in this motorcycle club to be humble and hear my brothers out and to take that and say, hey, I hear what you're saying. That's information that I'm hearing for the first time. I want to hear more about this. Or, hey, like this is a little bit, of some time, I'm going to take some time to process this. And can we get back at another time? Because I need to think about this. And maybe there is something to that. And to be humble and handle, those situations like that accordingly. So, and then the other one of the brothers, the comment about brotherhood that one of them mentioned is loyalty, right? And honestly, loyalty is a big deal for me as a brother. Loyalty is a big deal for me as a person, right? In my relationship with my wife, loyalty is a big deal. My relationship with my kids, loyalty is a big deal. My relationship at work with my employers and, with my peers at work, loyalty is a big deal. And in a brotherhood, I would say that that's only heightened, right? Is brothers in the club, it means something to me that I can trust them. It means something to me to know that this brother is going to have my back. It means something to me to know that I'm going to have that brother's back, and that we can all, be there to back each other up, right? So I think loyalty is key. I think if I'm having to worry about, brothers trying to cheat me, or brothers trying to, go to another club, or, to jump ship. I think all that stuff is toxic for the brotherhood of this motorcycle club. And so loyalty for me, just having that peace of mind to know that I have loyal brothers, is a big deal. So those are some of the comments that some of the brothers gave in that chapter meeting. And as I was sitting there thinking about it, and I was like, no, those are some really good points. What are some things that I would add to that, right? And one of these we touched on already. The first bullet that I wrote down is respect, right? Why do I think respect is important? I think it's easy, and this is one thing I was talking about with those brothers, is it's great that you guys get along great. It's awesome that you guys feel super comfortable with each other, that you guys are learning things about each other that you didn't know before, the good, bad, and the ugly. And I counseled them. I said, my one concern, with comfortability between brothers and friends is, don't get, just because you're comfortable with them and just because they're your brother, I think it's easy to get too comfortable to where you say things that aren't okay to say, or you do things that aren't okay to do, right? They are your brother, but you got to keep in mind that, they're a patch holder of that club, and that holds a certain level of respect that comes with it. And so if you disagree, you can disagree respectfully. At the end of the day, if there's a vote, this is a good lesson right here, right? Is that if there's a vote, every brother is equal, right? That's another thing I had down for equality that I value in brotherhood, is that it's equal. It doesn't matter if you're the president. It doesn't matter if you're the sergeant at arms. It doesn't matter if you were one of the founders of the club. It doesn't matter if you were the newest member of the club. It doesn't matter if you're in the mother chapter or if you're in a different chapter. When you're sitting around that table in that meeting, every brother's got a vote, right? So in a local meeting, it doesn't matter if you're the president. It doesn't matter if you're the newest member. Every member has a vote. Actually, the president doesn't even have a vote unless it's a tiebreaker vote. And so you got to keep that in mind, right? Is I might be that president's brother, but it's not okay for me to tell that president, to go screw off. Like, that's disrespectful, not only because he's a brother, but also because of his position. And so I think that this respect thing is key. Is, yeah, this familial relationship is awesome. This feeling of family, this feeling of camaraderie, this tight-knit friendship that you don't find other places. But don't forget that they deserve the same amount of respect that you would want. And I think it's easy that when you get too comfortable with somebody, that sometimes we forget about the respect part. And so I would say that that's a warning, right? Is always remember to be respectful of people. And I think, once again, loyalty and respect kind of goes back to this, right? We talk about old ladies, right? In our club, we call them rogue angels. At the end of the day, if you respect me as a brother, you're not going to be trying to, be flirtatious with my wife, right? That's not what brothers do. When we look at rules like that, where they're spelling it out for you, but really, if you just come down to loyalty and respect, like that should be a given. Like that rule shouldn't have to be written down. It should just be assumed, right? And once again, why would somebody, do that and to make that offense? Because it's, selfishness, right? Are we all selfish? We are. But it's a learning process to try to become more selfless and more about the family, more about the unit, more about your brothers, and less about your own personal desires, right? I hope that resonates, because I think that's like a key part of brotherhood, is like the loyalty and respect. And then another, comment was, let's see. Alan says, on that note, if you truly see someone as a brother, then you should see their lady as a sister. That's how family is. Yes, I agree. But once again, just because, and once I would say the same warning there is I would agree with that. But remember, just because you see her as your sister, you still need to be respectful, right? There's still that same warning with comfort levels, is if you start getting too comfortable with people, you start to say and do things that you wouldn't, say or do normally. And I would say it's important not to forget that. Yeah, it looks like Ratchet, Joe, Jester, Randy, they all agree with your comment, Alan. Ratchet says old lady stands for off limits lady. Yep, I agree. So what other questions do you guys have about brotherhood? I'm going to try to pull up something here. Just going to pull up some pictures about brotherhood, see if you guys have any, questions or talks about brotherhood. And this is us when we rode to Four Corners. There's a couple of us brothers before a club meeting. Once again, just getting together earlier before the meeting, going for a little ride, hanging out, having drinks together, just spending quality time with each other. Here's a good one. Ratchet, you'll like this because you're center of attention on this one. Here's a picture from our club trip last year. And look at all those happy faces in that photo. We're all out riding, we're all having a good time, and we're just working on, building those relationships and, enjoying that brotherhood bond that we have. All right, looks like we got a couple more comments here. Talk about a time where you have had to overcome a problem with a brother and it made, I'm not sure what the NC is, but made it stronger. I think that there have been lots of times and experiences where that's happened. There's been lots of, personal things that I've dealt with brothers that said, hey, this is where I'm coming from. And, this is this is something where it's going to be hard for me to call you brother because of, this, behavior that you're having, right? I don't want to get into, specifics of any stories or give out any details or names or anything, but I have had both scenarios happen, in my opinion. I've had times where I've had, conflicts with brothers, personal conflicts with brothers, and I've had talks with them, and there was a common understanding met, and it strengthened our bonds of brotherhood after that, right? I've had conversations with brothers, and because of pride, it kind of went the nuclear option, right? I've had conversations with brothers, like I said, not because of my own personal issues, but because I was assigned by the club to work with brothers to fix issues. And once again, I've had those go great, and I've had those go bad, right? And my stressing point would be is, if it's pride, right? Pride is a brotherhood killer. It's like, have pride in your brotherhood and not yourself. Because if anything gets in the way of brotherhood, it's pride in your ego. Let's see. Joseph says brotherhood is innate connection. You know it when you have it. That's true. And I would say that with some brothers, that's more innate. There's going to be some guys in the club. There might be some guys in the club and you just like hit it off instantly like that, right? And that's awesome. And there's other guys in the club, brothers in the club, and I kind of touched on this earlier. They might not be ones that I would, choose to go hang out with, right? But they're my brothers in the club. And there's some of those relationships that are going to take a little bit more work. You have to put a little bit more time, a little bit more effort into those relationships with your brothers. But I urge you to do it. Like those relationships with those brothers can be just as meaningful to you than the relationships with brothers that just come easy. And sometimes they could be more meaningful. And sometimes you could learn more from that brother that takes more work, because they are different from you, because they do have different strengths from you, and they have different weaknesses. And sometimes, the more not like you are, the more that you can learn from each other. And so I would encourage you that just because you don't feel that initial brotherhood, being super innate and powerful right off the bat, is don't abandon it. Is continue to, nourish it, continue to work on that relationship, find things that you guys have in common. When you have disagreements, talk about them. Welcome, Lance. Long Run says bantering between everyone is fine, but remember there's a fine line and balance between bantering and crossing the line disrespecting your brother. I agree. And I think that's what I was trying to comment on earlier, is just because you're at a certain comfort level, at what point does that bantering become harassment? You're like, well, we're all guys, we should, let it roll off our back. We are all guys, right? But that means that some people got some, serious, pride and ego that can get hurt too. And so is that something that, we should be trying to compromise, or is that just going against what we're trying to do here? And we're trying to build better brotherhood, better relations. And so, yeah, joke around, have fun, but, keep it lighthearted. And also, be aware of your situation. You can tell when people are starting to get agitated and bugged by things. And if you see that, then, way off. And if you see brothers continuing to like push a button off somebody, maybe tell them, hey man, like just lay off for now, right? It's not worth it. So Jester says, I feel like it's a good thing to get to know your brothers outside of motorcycle related times too. Yeah. 100%. You know, motorcycles is what the passion for motorcycles is what brings us together. But the Brotherhood goes way beyond just our passion for motorcycles. I mean, it's a family, right? And I can't tell you that. I mean, there's brothers I talk to sometimes daily, right? And I'd probably talk to all of you daily if I had the time in the day to talk to all of you daily. But, you know, unfortunately, with family and work responsibilities, that makes it pretty difficult. Javier says, my brothers, I just want to let you know that at this point, my brothers from the MC are more important than my blood brothers. Yeah, and that's cool. I think that your family, you know, should have a special place in your heart. But the cool thing about, you know, the brothers in the motorcycle club is they're brothers that you're choosing. And sometimes you're not choosing, you know, an easy relationship. Sometimes your relationships with brothers can be difficult. But that doesn't mean that they can't be rewarding, right? Sandy says, missing the brotherhood, missing my brothers, and knowing others have my six is why I came back. So blessed to have this club. Thank you, brothers. Yeah, I can't imagine how you feel, Sandy, because, you know, sometimes I go on vacation, you know, when I went on a cruise earlier this year, or even if I just get busy at work and I don't see my brothers for a couple of days and I start, you know, having withdrawals almost, right? It's like I feel disconnected from the brotherhood. I start feeling like I need to, you know, plan an event to get everyone together. And I definitely understand where you're coming from on that. I've never experienced that for a long term, but I definitely experienced that from a short term. I think the more that you submerge yourself in building relationships with your brothers, and the more that you submerge yourself, not just your brothers in your local chapter, but just in the club, and getting to know brothers in even other chapters, even, is the more that you almost kind of need that. And you realize, hey, I am not functioning at the same capability that I was before, because you're not getting that integral, you know, fix of brotherhood in your life. Joseph says in Black Dragon's Bible, he says, never hit a brother. Yeah. I would agree. I don't think in the history of our club we've ever had a brother hit another brother, at least that I'm aware of. Have I wanted to hit brothers before? Definitely. You know, have I come close to hitting brothers before? For sure, right? But once again, it's a restraint, and I would echo this: is at the end of the day, once again, if you hit that brother, what good is it going to do? Is there's disciplinary actions in the bylaws to take care of most of those issues, and at the end of the day, if it's against the bylaws, is it better to let the bylaws do the heavy lifting for you? My answer is yes. And I've had, you know, brothers that have broken bylaws, or, you know, broken loyalty or respect. And at the end of the day, this is my deal. Is like, could I take disciplinary action against him? I could, right? I damn well could. But I would much rather, me personally, pull that brother aside, or if it is a bigger club issue, have the sergeant at arms pull that brother aside and clearly identify what the issues are, and that this will not happen again, or there's going to be disciplinary action, and have that brother learn a lesson and improve and fix himself to become a better brother, to be a better brother for that chapter, to be a better brother for the club, than to let my hard feelings against him poison the club, right? I would much rather give that brother a shot at redemption and forgive that brother and give him that opportunity to show me that I'm wrong. or to, give him that opportunity to change than to create this conflict between brothers. And I think this goes to another point is, we're calling each other brothers. We're calling each other family. We're supposed to be this tight-knit group. But I cannot tell you how many times I've seen in the motorcycle club, in this club, where brothers have harbored ill feelings towards each other for long periods of time sometimes, right? And I would urge you that if you have an issue with a brother, whether that's a personal issue, that's a club issue, whatever, is resolve it. Go one-on-one with that brother and talk with him. It's not worth the poison and the toxicity that it does for that chapter. It's not worth, what it does to the club as a whole. It's not worth how it cuts off your ties to the Brotherhood. And it's not worth how it cuts off that brother's ties. And so I would say whenever there's issues, do whatever you can to resolve that issue as quickly as possible. Now, if you're not sure how to handle an issue with another brother, is seek counsel, right? You have a sergeant at arms, maybe your president, or maybe your VP, or maybe he's got, a really good buddy in the club that maybe knows him a little bit better than you. And you can say, hey, I'm having an issue with, so-and-so. Do you have any words of advice for me? But I would say handle it sooner than later, as soon as possible. Welcome, Ghost Eagle. Let's see. Javi says, they do have a special place in my heart, but they don't have a bike, and I'd rather hang out with you guys. Yeah. So if your true family had motorcycles, then they would be more important than us, huh, Javi? Ghost Eagle says, a club I was in had a boxing ring. If there was beef, we took it to the ring. Whoever won did not matter. After the fight ended, we kept it in the ring and dropped it. I think that if that's the way that club wants to resolve those things, then that's a great way to do it, and I kind of feel the same way, whether you're boxing, physically. I think someone mentioned earlier that Black Dragon says never hit a brother. But hey, if that's what the club is deciding, hey, if that's what a chapter decides, if a chapter says, hey, we're going to handle personal disputes in a boxing ring, that's what they decide. I think that my issue with that is if it's a moral issue and you got a little guy and the big guy is the one that's wrong, and then the little guy just gets pummeled, and is there ever justice really being served, right? And so, hey, I got zero issues, beefing it out with people. I have with other people that haven't been in the club. I've had guys that have come to my house for parties, and they've been acting like drunken idiots, and they were treating their girlfriends or their wife like shit, and kicked them out of my house and gotten physical confrontations with them outside my house. And but at the end of the day, I would personally rather deal with issues trying to de-escalate and resolve them one-on-one first, with words, personally. But Ghost says, I would rather fight a bigger dude than a smaller one. Yeah. I mean, those little guys are quick, and sometimes they're hard to get a hold of. I agree with you there. I've had my fair share of dealing with those little squirrely guys. What other questions you guys have on Brotherhood? I mean, this topic is one that you could write books on forever. So it's a pretty big topic. I think going back to it is you got to remember that if you're wearing if you're a full patch member of the club, is you're wearing the family crest on your back. You're wearing the colors. If that's the case, then every brother has earned the same right. That doesn't mean that every brother is perfect, right? And so it's every brother's responsibility to better the club, to better their chapter, to be a better brother for their brothers, right? And you have to think about the way that things are handled. Somewhat war game it in your mind, right? Is, hey, I have this issue with this brother. If I handle it this way, what effects is that going to have on the club? And I think sometimes people say, oh, I'm just going to ignore it. Well, the problem with ignoring it is it never really goes away. Is it just kind of eats at you and it affects everything. And so I would always say, for sure, think of the best way to resolve it. If you need to, bounce that way to resolve it off of leadership and say, hey, I need to talk to you, in private about this. And I just need this to stay between you and I, but this is the situation that's going on between me and another brother. And this is how I feel like, I'm going to resolve this. What do you think? What do you think? That would be an appropriate thing to do, to seek counsel from the leader. What's not appropriate is if you got one guy in your chapter that you got beef with, and you're friends with 3 other dudes in your chapter that you're hanging out with all the time, and you're just calling them on the phone. Hey, yo, this guy did this. Can you believe this? This is like really messed up. And you're all just talking crap on him, right? What does that do for the brotherhood? So now, whether that person started it and was toxic, it doesn't matter, because now you're being toxic. And so remember that, right? Is if it's truly about the brotherhood, which is what it should be if you're in a motorcycle club, you got to keep in mind, hey, if there's issues, I need to think about how I'm going to resolve this, because I don't want to add to the problem here. I want to help. Joe said brotherhood starts from the top down. Yeah, I mean, I think as you get to be a full patch brother in the club, these are some things you need to think about when you're putting your vote in for people that are going to be in leadership. Is, who are the ones that you truly respect and why? I mean, don't vote in the people just because they're your best friend, but vote in the people that you really feel like is the best brother. Those who are the most respectful, those are who are loyal, those who would actually do the job the best. Jester says it's good to check in with your brothers to make sure they're good and not always wait for them if you suspect them to have an issue. Yeah. Which brings me to another point. So inactive brothers, okay? It's inevitable. We've dealt with it, in our club, is you got brothers who will stop being active in the club for one reason or another, right? And it's hard when you call them and talk to them and they say, hey, well, I just haven't been feeling the brotherhood, And I'm like, brotherhood's a two-way street, right? As you get out of the brotherhood, what you put into it, it's sweat equity, right? The more that you're connected into the brotherhood, the more that you're connected into the club, the more that you personally get out of it, the more value that you find in it, right? And so that would be, my recommendation is, hey, if you want other brothers to be calling you, checking in on you, then you should be calling and checking in on them. It's like, how can you expect a brother or brothers to be doing something that you've never done? If you want brothers just to stop by your house and check in on you, when's the last time that you just rode your motorcycle over to a brother's house and knocked on his door to check on him? When's the last time that you invited a brother and his wife to go out to dinner with you? Is if you are expecting certain things out of your brothers, you better be doing those things, or else you're just a hypocrite, and that's not good for the brotherhood either. Wyatt says, at what point do you start to look at someone as a brother? In my opinion, trust and respect have to be earned first. Yeah, so that's difficult, right? I treat every single individual with the Rogue Souls colors on their back as my brother until you prove me otherwise. Because in my opinion, it takes a vote to become a brother around the table. Now, whether it's a vote around a local chapter table or my table, it doesn't really matter. If I'm trusting my other brothers in a local chapter to vote you in, then I need to trust their vote, right? And I might not have that same, loyalty, and you might not have earned that loyalty and respect with me, but you earned it with those that I do call my brother. And so until you have lost that with me, then you have it. Yeah, exactly, Ghost Eagle. He says, you be that brother that you want others to be. And if you want the best of another brother, you give it back the same. Would you feel indifferent about one of our brothers or think less of him if he went to his SAA to confront another brother he's being bullied by? And what kind of action would you expect of that SAA? Yeah, so I think I understand your question, Lo, is how would I feel about a brother who went to his SAA to resolve the issue of being bullied? I mean, I guess I don't have the context of the situation. So if there is a situation you want to get with me on that, we can talk about that in more detail. At the end of the day, the way that I look at the SAA is if it's a personal issue between me and another brother, I'll deal with it individually. Okay. But I do feel like members do have the right to bring it up to the club, right? Especially if it's affecting the whole chapter. Like if a brother has, done certain offenses to multiple individuals in a chapter of the club, then I feel like that's where the SAA definitely needs to come in, because then it's not an isolated issue between one brother and another brother. Then it becomes an issue that's a club issue, right? It's if the brothers made the same offense or same deal with on multiple fronts, then it becomes more, it's not an isolated issue anymore. And so it should be addressed by the SAA. I guess if he's being bullied and it's been a constant thing, I guess if I was the SAA, my question would be like, hey, brother, I get that you're being bullied by this brother. I appreciate you coming to me. What steps have you taken? Have you had a conversation with this brother yet? And so my take on it always is, if it's an issue between two members, I would always like them to try to work out that between themselves first. Now, the caveat to that is, if a brother came to me and says, hey, I have an issue with this brother, but I'm not sure that I feel comfortable dealing with that one-on-one, can you be a mediator for it? I would say that's appropriate. Especially, like, let's say this is a member and the VP, and the member saying, hey, I'm worried that, this VP is just going to, run me over because of his position. Then I would go to the SAA and say, hey, look, I got a personal issue, with the VP. I would like you to, sit in this meeting to make sure that it all goes kosher, right? I hope that answers your question, Lo. Ghost says the role of an SAA is a very high one. If the SAA cannot be a bully, means he is in it for the power of it. It puts the club name tarnished. Yeah. No, I agree. Ghost Eagle, SAA is a difficult position. I've spent a couple of years as an SAA, and sometimes you get tasked by the club or the president to, have some extremely difficult conversations, or you're just told, hey, this is the issue, it needs to be resolved, and this is the deadline. And, sometimes you're not sure how to go about it, right? But you just got to do the best that you can do. As the SAA, just remember that, the bylaws and protocols are your friend. And if you got the bylaws to back you up, and as far as, what the offenses are, and as far as what the actions to be taken are, disciplinary actions, then you're in the best place. If there's ever a gray area, then as an SAA, I would always counsel with the president and say, hey, this isn't really spelled out in the bylaws, and I would seek counsel from the president, or maybe even the chapter, of how to appropriately deal with that. I mean, I would never want to be the authority by myself as an SAA speaking out of turn for the club. That would be my only thing. What did Wyatt say? Did I not cover your question, Wyatt? Okay, will that answer your question? Yeah. Follow the chain of command. I would agree with that, Ghost Eagle. Yeah, it is. The SAA is one of the hardest positions to wear. I would say that besides president, I would say the SAA is probably the most difficult position in the club, in my opinion. Yeah, and Ghost Eagle says this is one reason why it's important to learn the bylaws as a prospect and the ins and outs of it, because the bylaws is what governs the Brotherhood, right? And how do you expect to be operating within the Brotherhood and be able to interact with your brothers if you don't know the bylaws, right? Is if there's issues between you and another brother, I mean, I guess that begs a question. There's personal issues that aren't even covered in the bylaws. It could just be your personality traits, but that just needs to be something that you get over. I mean, that's just your own pride issue. That sounds like a personal problem, right? But if there's bigger issues than that, especially if there are issues where brothers are saying, I lost respect for this person because, he, defied this part of the bylaws, or, this person's not a loyal brother because, of this issue. I would say that all needs to be addressed by the SAA, especially if it's a bylaws issue, because there's a certain disciplinary action. There has to be a certain type of, like in our bylaws, there needs to be either a verbal, written warning and a record of it. And that needs to happen ever before there's any other kind of further disciplinary action for most cases. All right, brothers. Well, we've hit this for about an hour. Let's see. Evan has one more question. Can hang-arounds learn the bylaws, or do they have to be a prospect? I hear a lot about the bylaws, and I would like to learn them. Evan, we will get with you on that as you get closer to the prospecting process. But yeah, the bylaws are super important. And they're also, they're also subject to change. We've had some stuff come up in the club in the past that has required disciplinary action, and we realize, oh, there maybe is a loophole here in the bylaws, and this, isn't defined very well, and that has to go to the highest level of the club, and it has to be taken to a vote so that we can clarify that in the bylaws. So there's still things that the bylaws aren't perfect, right? And it's a process. But in conclusion, brothers, I just want you to know that the Brotherhood and Rogue Souls Motorcycle Club means everything to me. I find extreme value in this brotherhood, and it motivates me to continue to stay actively involved in the motorcycle club every day. It motivates me to reach out to my brothers, and sometimes, when I'm feeling down, right, or I'm going through my own personal stuff, the solution to my issues is really going outward and saying, what can I do to help out my brothers? What can I do to reach out to my brothers? And so I think that would be what I urge each of you is, think about, what could you maybe just sit down, take 5 or 10 minutes tonight and, get a pen and paper and say, hey, here's some of my thoughts, written down from, this conversation today on this live stream, and say, hey, what are some things that I want to focus on and try to be a better brother? Maybe that's, hey, I'm going to call my brothers, I'm going to try to make 1 phone call a day. Maybe that's saying, hey, I want to have more, meaningful time spent with my brothers. I'm going to try to, invite my brothers over to my house, for drinks or for, dinner, 1 night a month or something, or a couple nights a month. But think about things that you can do better as a brother. And remember that these relationships are meaningful, and don't burn them, because not only is it toxic between you and that individual, but it becomes toxic for the chapter. It becomes toxic for the club. When there's conflict in the clubs that's not resolved, it is a cancer for the motorcycle club. And so don't be that guy. If somebody's coming to you because he wants to talk to you, just be humble, right? At the end of the day, if you still don't agree with them, be like, hey, I really appreciate you coming to me and telling me that. I feel differently about that, but I just want you to know that I care about you as a brother, right? There are respectful ways to handle disagreements. But once again, given everyone's differences, the brotherhood is what should come first. So Ghost Eagle says most clubs will not give hang around the bylaws until you earn the prospect cut. Yeah, that's true. I would say the caveat to that is maybe having somebody read through before they're making their final decision to prospect. But every club's going to handle that a little bit differently, but it's definitely not, the bylaws are definitely not something that are just handed out to everybody. I appreciate it, Baz. Thanks for the compliments. Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Miles. Hey, I appreciate it. I hope you guys have a good night, and I'll chat with you soon. I appreciate everyone getting on and making all the comments and being actively involved. Love you, brothers. Rogue Souls forever.